Okay guys, so the last few years I kind of neglected one of my favorite ways to fish in the winter, and that is the hard plastic suspending jerkbait. Now I kind of put this favorite technique aside in order to try to, I guess, work on my bottom contact fishing using like weightless soft plastics and Ned rigs in the winter. But this year, where I live, it's gotten really cold way earlier than normal. So I decided that it was time to get back into jerkbait fishing. And in this video, I'm going to be, I guess, giving you guys some suggestions on how to put together a jerkbait combo or combos. Because after I discovered I love jerkbait fishing and how it was very effective in the winter, I kind of refined my tackle to throw the jerkbait. And right here, what I have in my hand is pretty much the exact same combo that I first put together for jerkbait fishing. That is going to be my 2013 Shimano METANIUM in the XG ratio, 8.5 to 1. And the rod is a Shimano X Pride 6'10" medium with a fast action. Lure rating on this is 1/4 ounce to 3/4 ounce. Now the original rod was the first generation X Pride of this model. It was a 6'10" medium, but the tip on that one broke, so I'm using the second gen. But I'm not going to be using this combo this winter for jerkbaits anymore. I've actually put together 2 new combos because now I have a requirement for the combo that I previously did not have before. So let's talk about it. Now my favorite jerkbait to fish is the Lucky Craft Pointer 78, which is about a 3/8 ounce jerkbait, which is 10 grams. But I will occasionally throw the Vision 110 from Megabass and some of the bigger Duo Realis jerkbaits. And this year I'm going to be focusing on some jerkbaits that I bought a couple of years ago but totally forgot I had, and that's going to be the Shimano World Minnows with that flash boost technology. Now those are heavier, coming in at about 1/2 ounce and up. So that means I have 2 dedicated jerkbait combos. One for the Pointer 48 and jerkbaits that go down to about 1/4 ounce, and then one for the bigger jerkbaits like the 110 and that Shimano World Minnow. Now first let's talk about the rod. Now when it comes to rods, of course everyone's going to have their preference, but I recommend a short rod, as short as you can get away with, and still, you know, be able to work the jerkbait effectively. I think I'm hitting bottom out here. So for me personally, that means 6'10" is going to be the longest rod that I'll be using for a jerkbait. And I actually prefer shorter, like 6'6" or 6'8". Well, there's another expensive jerkbait gone. So of course, naturally, I retied with an even more expensive jerkbait. So where was I? Oh yeah, rod characteristic number 2, and that is try to use the lightest rod possible. The lighter the better. So this might even mean having to use some of your more expensive high-end rods that tend to be lighter, like maybe a LOOMIS NRX or whatnot, but that's not totally necessary if you have a rod that's light and cheaper. All right, so number 3. That's going to be the rod action. Now, if you go on Tackle Warehouse and you look up, I guess, dedicated jerkbait rods, a lot of times you'll see that they list those rods as having moderate fast or moderate actions, pretty much like a crankbait rod. Now, I prefer the opposite. I prefer fast and even extra fast rods, or at least rods that are stiff and recover and get back to, you know, their straight shape quicker. Now, let's recap the 3 rod characteristics that I recommend. Now, 1, it's got to be shorter. For me, nothing over 6'10". 6'8" is probably the perfect length for me. Number 2, a very lightweight rod. And number 3, I prefer a fast or extra fast action. Now, why is that? Well, the first 2 characteristics, if you can't see what I'm doing now, they should be pretty obvious that when you're fishing these suspending jerkbaits in the winter when it's cold, you're going to be working your wrist quite a lot. Now, of course, the cadence of, you know, when you jerk or snap your rod, it's going to be much slower than this, but sometimes it can be faster. And if you're the kind of person that goes out and fishes, you know, hours at a time, this gets tiring. So the lighter the combo and the shorter the rod, the easier it's going to be for you. Now, as far as the fast or extra fast action, let me show you how I decided on that. Now, let me drop this jerkbait in the water here. Hopefully you guys can see it. So, when you have a faster action rod, it takes a lot less movement to impart the action. So, let me let some more line out, but see, I'm just barely twitching the rod tip. It's making the jerkbait move. So on the end of a long cast, you kind of know how your jerkbait's moving because the rod action is more precise. And you don't have to move quite as much as with a moderate rod to impart action on said jerkbait. See how I'm barely just twitching, but it's making the jerkbait move. That's that stiff rod action right there. Now, a lot of people will say, well, you know, a fast or extra fast rod is going to rip the trebles out of the mouth. I've never had that happen. And especially if you're fishing jerkbaits like this that have 3 big trebles, 2 of those trebles get stuck in that fish, he's not coming off. So that's just my experience, and that's just my opinion on what to look for in a rod. Okay, so let's get to the reel. What reel or reels, or what should you look for in a reel or reels for jerkbait fishing? Now, me being a bank fisherman and having to cover a lot of water, you would think that, you know, a super long casting reel would be the #1 priority, but honestly, that's probably going to be one of the lower priorities. First priority is going to be having a small, compact reel that is comfortable to palm. And hopefully that's self-explanatory, because you can see what I'm doing here. Palming this reel and jerking it with my wrist. Now, #2, use the lightest reel that you can get your hands on. Me personally, I would suggest about 6.5 ounces and under, or maybe 7 ounces and under, nothing over that. I mean, there's a lot of long casting reels in my arsenal, but they're super heavy. And trust me, when you're doing this all day, after about 3 or 4 casts of you jerking the jerkbait in, especially some of these bigger ones like this World Minnow, your wrists are going to start burning. So a lighter, smaller, compact reel definitely helps. Now the third characteristic is a fast gear ratio. And that's because when you're fishing the jerkbait, in between the twitches or pops, you're having to reel in the slack. So the faster the gear ratio, the easier it's going to be to reel in the slack. So since this is an 8.5 to 1, I think it's bringing in, God, I think almost 3 feet or 36 inches per crank handle. So here I am, I'm doing my pops. That creates slack in the line. So I just pop the reel handle and that slack is immediately taken up so I can do my next set of twitches. So with the slow gear ratio, you're gonna have to move that handle more to pick up that slack. So that's why I recommend the fastest gear ratio you can get away with, because you're not fishing jerkbaits like a crankbait where you're reeling it in like this. The rod is doing all the work. The rod is imparting all the action. The reel is just there to pick up that slack line. Now, characteristic number 4 for the reel. This is where the long casting comes in. Now, of course, if you're on a boat or whatever, you can just potter up to any spot you want and use your electronics. You probably don't have to cast as far as you can on every cast, but if you're on the bank, I mean, jerkbait fishing is about covering water, putting this lure in front of as many fish as you can in an effort to get them to follow it and bite. Now in the winter, you know, the fish are lethargic, probably not eating as much, but I think that most bass, especially when you're pausing a long time in between twitches, will probably follow a suspending jerkbait for quite a while before they actually commit. So yeah, casting distance does matter, but in my opinion, for me personally, that's going to be, you know, lower on the list of wants for a jerkbait reel, because I mean, right now my wrist is already burning and this is a lightweight combo. I would actually prefer something even lighter than this now that I'm getting older. And just keep in mind, I haven't fished jerkbaits for a while, at least not for any length of time. Okay, so let's go over the last characteristic that I recommend for a jerkbait reel, and that is going to be having a graphite or carbon body. And the reason for that is, you know, if you're out fishing in 40-degree weather, and maybe some of you guys are up there in the north and you're fishing in, you know, high 30-degree weather, if you have an all-metal reel and you're switching combos and you go pick up an all-metal reel, the older you get, the more painful it is to pick that reel up. Picking up a cold metal reel that's almost frozen sends pain down to my bones. So having a graphite or carbon frame reel definitely helps when you're fishing jerkbaits in the cold of winter, as they warm up pretty fast in your hand and then they stay warm. I mean, I remember days where I just stopped and packed it up because it's so cold and my reels were so cold and it was just so uncomfortable. So yeah, that's going to be a definite requirement for me when it comes to a jerkbait reel. It's going to have a carbon or graphite frame. Now let's quickly touch on line. I only use fluorocarbon, 10 pound for the 3/8 ounce jerk baits and under, and 12 pound for like the Vision 110 and heavier jerk baits like that. Of course, monofilament works too, but for me, I think that fluorocarbon is a little bit less visible. And of course that should help, because in the winter, the waters tend to get really, really clear. And you don't want to turn fish off that are line shy or use, you know, really bright lines. Even though I'm using yellow line right now. All right, so with that being said, let me show you my 2 jerkbait combos that I'm going to be using this winter. Okay, so replacing my Shimano METANIUM Shimano XPride combo for the heavier 1/2 ounce and up jerk baits like the Vision 110 and whatnot is going to be this combo. This is my Shimano BANTAM 6'8" medium fast action combined with the PISCIFUN Carbon XCS baitcaster in an 8.1 to 1 gear ratio. So of course I picked this reel because it meets pretty much all the attributes that I'm looking for in a reel. It's small, it's lightweight, I think coming in at like 5.5 ounces. It casts really far, it's got a dual brake system. And as you can see, the spool is really, really deep, so it holds plenty of 12-pound line. And just like its namesake, the reel is made of carbon from its frame to its side plates. So yeah, this combo looks pretty sick. A lot sicker than I thought it was going to look. But out here in the sunlight or in the daylight, man, I really like it. All right, so let's get to my next combo. Okay, so the combo that I'm going to be using in place of my ALDEBARAN 50 or ALDEBARAN 30 for jerk baits that are 1/4 ounce up to 3/8 ounce, it's going to be my MEGABASS RYOGA, which is 6'8" medium, paired with the PISCIFUN Spark Pro. Now the Spark Pro I think only weighs like 6 ounces. It's got a pretty shallow spool, so that's why I'm using it for the smaller jerk baits. But it's also got a lightweight spool, so it should cast really, really good. Now the reel is untested by me, but if it doesn't work out, I can replace it with another reel, but this is what I'm going to go with initially. And that of course is because it's got a carbon frame and side plates. So yeah, it looks pretty good on this purple MEGABASS RYOGA. The RYOGA is rated as a moderate fast, but I have used it for jerk baits before and it works really, really good. But yeah, that's the combo I'm going to be using for the smaller jerk baits. So there we go, fellas. These are going to be my 2 dedicated jerkbait combos for this winter, replacing my Shimano METANIUMs, my Shimano ALDEBARANs, and my CURADO 50 and 70s. And the great thing about these reels is that they're very, very affordable. We're talking, you know, $50 to $60 for each reel on PISCIFUN's website. And I think they're going to work great. Now there are other reels that I could have used in place of the Carbon XCS that met the criteria, like my Shimano CHRONARCH MGL. But the Carbon XCS is about an ounce lighter, as well as it is much smaller to palm. So yeah, hopefully this will help anyone who is getting into jerkbaits or has been fishing jerkbaits and is thinking about putting together some new combos that will improve your jerkbait fishing. All right, guys, thanks a lot.